welcome to another Watch Geek video. Today I'll be doing a review of a Seiko SRPB61, which is a new addition to the Sky Prospex line. But first, I wanted to thank Silver Time Watch Store for supplying this watch, and if you want to check them out, you can click on the link in the description. Now, this watch was one of the models released at this year's Bezel World in March of 2017, and kind of went by unnoticed, which is not the watch's fault, but the hype that was created by the 62 MAS reissues, which is a shame as I find this to be one of the best looking Prospex watches of the new generation. Now, this watch is on the large side with a diameter of 44.7 and a lug-to-lug of 50.2 millimeters, and it does wear large. Now, although the lugs are not sticking out past my 6.8-inch wrist, which is a sign of a watch being too large for you, it is still too large for my tastes, and I think it's partly down to the bezel that's made pretty thin. Despite the thickness also being pretty chunky at 13.5 millimeters, the watch actually looks very thin because of the large diameter and because the actual side of the case is not that thick. Now, I'm guessing the watch would be even thicker if it wasn't for the way they cut out the case to place the bezel. It reminds me of how the bezel is placed on the legendary Monster, and I love that detail. It's really clever engineering that helps in reducing the thickness. I also love the look of the bezel. It has pretty uniquely styled teeth that point upwards and are relatively sharp, which makes them remarkably easy to grip and makes operating the bezel a joy. The bezel is used as a calculator and a conversion tool, which is why it has no clicks and is bidirectional to make for an efficient and fast usage. Now, if you want to learn how to actually use it, I would recommend checking out a video by Mark from Long Island Watch that I always recommend with these kind of watches, and I will put a link here in the corner as he explains it in detail and better than I ever could. The design of this watch, to me, looks like a hybrid between a Breitling and a Hamilton khaki, but I have to admit I like the look of it a lot, even if it isn't an all-original design. Now, even if I didn't like it, I could never fault to watch when the end result gives you an easy-to-read, legible timepiece, and this is one of the best new Seikos when it comes to that. The dial is surprisingly clean in design, with the only clutter coming from the chapter ring. On the dial, you just have the Seiko and Prospex logo with the automatic inscription, so not even the usual water resistance rating is written. A great decision in my opinion, especially because of the busyness of the chapter ring, which I also like as it's done in white to contrast the dial, but it's not pure brilliant white, but more an off-white, almost cream in color. It does look very classy and gives certain warmth to the dial. Now, usually watch brands, Seiko especially, make mistakes when it comes to little details that only people like me with a serious wrist disorder notice. These little details make perfect watches not so perfect. Like, let's say, using white hands with silver markers and vice versa, or using lume on the hands but not on the dial, like the Citizen I reviewed a couple of weeks ago, or something that bothers me the most, using hands that are too short. Now, this last one is, or should I say was, especially common on the first generation of 4-hour powered Seikos, as they increased the overall case sizes but kept making hands sized for the older and smaller 7S powered watches. With this watch, I'm happy to say all of these details have been done correctly. Hands and markers have a silver outline. They're both lumed, and the lume is fantastic, especially since both the hands and the markers have a really healthy sized area for lume application, and this being a Seiko lume means it lasts for a long time, which makes the watch easily readable no matter the conditions. And my favorite, all the hands are properly sized and proportionate to the dial and the case, so they all reach to their designated markers, which gives the feel and look of precision when reading and setting the time. I especially love the very Hamilton-looking little red tip of the seconds hand, which matches the 60 mark on the chapter ring and bezel. It really proves that sometimes less is more, as it's such a small splash of red, and yet somehow it just gives that something to the overall look and helps making it just right. The date is at 3 o'clock, and in making it white, it gives a nice balance to the 9 o'clock marker. Although, as usual, I would prefer a date at 4:30 in black and a full hour marker at 3, but even this looks okay. The case is very classical in both shape and finish, beside the cutout for the bezel I mentioned earlier. So the sides are polished to a mirror finish, and the top of the lugs is brushed, which means it will handle scratches better, as it is to be expected from a toolish looking watch like this. The back of the case is all highly polished and features an exhibition caseback that I'm a big fan of, even on cheaper watches, although some watch aficionados despise them on undecorated movements. The reason I like them even on cheap watches is that many people have gotten into this hobby after purchasing or receiving a watch with an exhibition case back, as they would start wondering how everything works inside, and through research, they eventually become infected with this watch disease that we have. Plus, not everyone can afford a watch with a hand-decorated movement as their first purchase. The crown is very large and easy to grip, which makes winding and setting up the watch a joy. And just like all 4-hour powered Seikos, turning the crown in the closed position will wind the movement, while pulling it to the first click will allow you to change the date. Pulling it to the last click stops the seconds hand so you can set up the time accurately. And just like with all mechanical watches, I would recommend not changing the date between 10 p.m. and 3 a.m. Now, despite the crown not being a screw-down crown, the water resistance is still an impressive 10 bar or 100 meters, which means you can take this watch swimming without any worries. Although I wouldn't recommend that while wearing it like this, as it comes on a leather strap. And it is a very nice leather strap. It's thick, it's bulky, but still has some flex in it. Although it does need to be worn in, just like a pair of good durable working boots. It really makes me feel like Seiko is upping their game in the straps department. The buckle is beautifully shaped, and it matches the case perfectly, as it's also polished on the sides while the top is brushed with the Seiko logo etched in it. There's also a bracelet version of this watch, but that one comes with an all-black dial, while this one has the already mentioned off-white chapter ring. And although I usually always recommend going for a bracelet version when one is available, this chapter ring gives so much to the overall look of the watch, I would gladly sacrifice the bracelet just to get this version. Also, losing a bracelet on a watch like this is really nothing to cry about, as this watch just begs to be worn on as many leather and NATO straps as you can get for it. During the week that it's been with me, I spent about an hour a day browsing the web looking at different strap options for it, and I think a distressed leather would be my personal choice, so strap lovers will come to their own with this watch. Now, the movement powering this watch is the 4R35, which is the same movement I covered in the Samurai review, meaning it's a date-only version of the 4R36. Now, these movements are the successors of the legendary 7S26 and share the same specs with it, so 21,600 beats per hour and a power reserve of about 41 hours. It comes with a quick set date, and unlike the 7S26, has the addition of hacking and hand winding, something watch people like myself have wanted from Seiko for years. So you can expect it to be reliable and easily serviceable for years to come. When it comes to accuracy, if worn regularly for long periods of time, you can expect a lot better accuracy than the stated -35 to +40 seconds a day, at least in my own experience. Now, this is a model where Seiko got everything right. Well, almost everything. The size is an issue for people with smaller wrists like mine, but if you can handle the size, you have the opportunity to wear a watch with a great design where form and function really go hand in hand with each other. Now, if Seiko made a smaller version, or even better, took this dial, these hands, and just placed them all in a smaller case while losing the calculator, bezel, and chapter ring, I would be all over that watch, as it would make for a perfect everyday watch. Anyways, with that futile message to Seiko, I would like to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like and subscribe, and until the next video, bye.